The Hittite civilization at the time was considered mythology. Why? Because they hadn't found it yet. Hey, welcome to Church for Skeptics. Dan Arsenal here. On the heels of the Enlightenment and Darwinian theory about how the universe got here, not the universe so much, but species got here at the time, we have higher criticism, which wants to demythologize the Bible. And on the heels of higher criticism comes biblical archaeology. And archaeology in general, of course, is not just biblical archaeology, but that's what I'm about. Last week we talked about when they find something, when archaeologists find something, if it's in the area of biblical narrative, it supports it. I read an article, and we're going to talk about this in several things, and I'll go forward on this, about all of the 10 archaeological things that are against the Bible. And every one of them was basically we haven't found it yet. It's like it's an argument from silence. Now, some of them are a little different. For example, they're saying that archaeologically, that Adam and Eve couldn't have existed because we have so much evidence for the evolution of man. Well, that's hardly an archaeological argument. We'll talk about it when we get to that particular one. But today I want to talk about the amazing Hittites. This would be evidence number one. Back in the higher criticism day, there were no evidences. There was no evidence. They didn't find it. Same thing with Belshazzar. He couldn't have existed because we haven't found it. The same thing with the Hittites. The Hittite civilization, mostly in the idea of people, are mentioned 46 times in the Old Testament. Now think about this. The Hittites are mentioned 46 times in the Old Testament. The first one, I'm not going to give all 46 of you, of course. The first one would be Genesis 23, where Abraham buys a cave from a Hittite. His name is, let me find it here, Ephron. He buys the cave for Sarah, to bury his wife, Sarah. Later, he's buried there. And Jacob, when he comes back from Egypt, his bones are buried there. And so it's now called the Cave of the Patriarchs, and it's in the West Bank. But he bought it from a Hittite. The most famous, and I'll go and only give you one more because this is the most famous Hittite in the Bible, was Uriah the Hittite, who was the husband of none other than Bathsheba. And of course, David committed adultery with Bathsheba and then had this fine general killed in battle to cover up his wickedness. If you go through and you find all the references to the Hittites in the Old Testament, there was a massive civilization. They're attributed with a lot of iron work. Their weapons were made of iron. They were a very fierce civilization and very old, and covered a long range of area, according to Scripture. In the early days of all this, demythologizing the Bible, the Hittites must have just been a mythological group, sort of like the Nephilim. Just they're made up, their mythology. They're just talking about some kind of mythology. But the story of how the Hittites, this is so neat, and I wish it was a movie. The story of discovering from archaeology, the Hittite civilization is remarkable. It really is like Indiana Jones. I'm going to condense it very quickly here. In 1812, there was a Swiss explorer. They weren't even called archaeologists in the day. They were explorers. And most of them were looking for some kind of treasure. But the Swiss explorer, who was Johann Burckhardt, was actually looking for a German explorer who had gotten lost, they thought, who had been looking for Petra, the great old ancient city of Petra. Well, here's a couple of things that I just think this is just interesting. I like history. Johann Burckhardt found Petra. And he finally found about the other German archaeologist, or explorer, if you want to call him that. He had become a Muslim. And so he was just embedded into the culture there in that area. And he later was murdered by somebody of some sect in those days. While he was doing this, this is the Swiss explorer, he found these writings and they were not cuneiform. They were hieroglyphics. Now, you know the difference probably. Hieroglyphics are what we associate with the Rosetta Stone and Egypt, of course, because that's how they wrote. That's how, if they wrote at all, it was to royalty. And so it was a very complicated, it was about pictures. And so each picture had a symbol. And so there were so many, it wasn't like we have 26 letters. They had thousands of pictures. And so it was very difficult to discern until they found the Rosetta Stone, and they used it, they deciphered the hieroglyphics using the Greek inscriptions that were side by side. They're pretty cool. That's archaeology for you. That happened, and the guy that discovered these hieroglyphics didn't say anything about it. And so they just kind of got lost in the dustbin of history until 1834. There was a French explorer who was not there in that at all. He went to Turkey. And when he was exploring in Turkey, he asked the locals, this is so cool, he asked the locals, are there any ruins around, ancient ruins, old things? They took him to a wall that started the whole thing off. This wall it was over a mile long. The locals didn't know where it came from or who built it, but the boulders of the wall were they could not have been possibly put up there by humans almost. They were so large. And the walls were a mile long, and they had gates, and the gates had, like the one they call the Lion Gate and one they call the Gate of the Gods. They had these enormous statues, and then they had relief in the walls, and the armies were marching, and they had these funny hats, like real tall peaked hats. They found the same hieroglyphic writings there that they found in a place called Hathan in Syria, northern Syria, southern Turkey, that area there. Well, to shorten this to the point that there were other discoveries made, and finally there was a guy that could decipher the whole thing. Archibald Sayce, S-A-Y-C-E, Archibald Sayce. He was a linguistic savant. He studied and read Greek and Hebrew at 10 years old. He deciphered 20 different languages. Some were dead languages, some were current languages, but he was fluent in all 20 of them. So when he discovered this, he made the connection. These hieroglyphics and these walls here connect with the Hittite civilization mentioned in the Bible. Now I'm going to read you, when I Googled the Hittite civilization, here's what I got. This is the artificial intelligence overview that we all get when we go to Google now. And here's what it says. The Hittite civilization was now think about this. This is just historical fact now. But it would never have been discovered without the Bible. They made the connection from these walls to the Bible. And then now, with all the extra archaeological findings they have found, this civilization lasted 1,700 years and made connections and trade rules and agreements with every other civilization in the ancient world, including Judah, the tribe of Judah. And I'm going to read the AI thing. I'll start over. Sorry about that. I got keyed up. The Hittite civilization was an ancient Anatolian, which means Asia Minor, Turkey, empire that emerged in the Bronze Age, reaching its peak between 1400 and 1200 BC. Of course, AI is going to say BCE, Common Era, before the Common Era. I say BC, before Christ, and centered in what is now Turkey. They were known for their military strength, pioneering ironworking and advanced chariot use, and their capital city of Hattusa, I think I mispronounced that earlier, contained a vast royal archive. The Hittite, in other words, we got a list of Hittite kings. The Hittite Empire ultimately collapsed due to internal strife and external threats, though their culture persisted in smaller states before fading by the 8th century BCE. That's the 700s BC. That's about the time of the rise of the Assyrians. And the Assyrians captured Israel in 722 BC. I've got underneath this, key aspects of Hittite civilization, empire and capital. At their height, the Hittites ruled a vast territory encompassing several central Anatolia, parts of Syria, and upper Mesopotamia. Their capital was Hattusa, a fortified city with monumental architecture. And we wouldn't have known all this, I don't think, unless we connected it with the Bible. The Hittite civilization at the time was considered, it was mythology. Why? Because they hadn't found it yet. And so they had, I don't know, it's like if I can't find it, if I can't see it, it must not be real. There are so many of these neat archaeological finds, and as we said earlier, not one single actual something that they found has contradicted anything in the Bible. They haven't found a few things that the Bible talks about, and so just like the Hittites and just like Belshazzar we talked about last week, they must be mythological because we haven't found them yet. Okay, we'll keep going. Thanks for watching this. I hope this is interesting to you, and we'll see you again. Thanks.